Everybody. Let's get started. And I have a question for everybody before we start. You guys do realize this is the Overanalyzing MLP panel, right?
Heck yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I didn't expect there to be that many people here. Feels so young. All right, I am the Brony critic. I am a internet critic and analyst for the Brony community from down in Dayton. And I want to welcome you guys to Overanalyzing MLP.
Yeah, I'm on computers.
I don't know.
Okay then. All right, so the nature of what this panel is basically going to be is I'd like it to be a very kind of somewhat more free form, general discussions of headcanons and fan theories and the like. You know, how we look at the show, what we like about the show, some of those things that we like to think are actually happening in the show, like the coolest ideas for fan theories. Like, there was this really cool fan theory that somebody came up with during the M.A. Larson Q&A yesterday. This little kid who came up with what the Pony of Shadows was, and saying that it was actually Tyrek.
I thought it was Tyrek.
Yeah, I did not realize that, but that makes so much sense, and it actually works with the whole season 4 thing. But I'm also throughout the panel going to give a little bit of advice to anyone who's wanting to start off with analyzing and critiquing the show, or maybe even if it's not necessarily the MLP community or show that you want to be reviewing, but trying to give you guys some advice and tips. I've been doing this for years. Maybe not the Brony fandom review, but still reviews. So anybody got anything they want to start with? Any cool ideas? Sure.
Could Pinkie Pie actually be a serial killer?
No. Yeah, you guys are probably also going to want to speak up. I'm also, so you guys know, I'm going to be recording this and putting it on my YouTube page. So if you guys want to watch the panel later, at a later date, you guys can check it out at my YouTube page, Brony Critic. So, no. Yeah, Pinkie Pie is not going to become a serial killer. I can guarantee you on that one.
One of my headcanons is that the reason Diamond Tiara singles out Apple Bloom for special hate is because her family seems to mostly ignore her, and she is very jealous of Apple Bloom's loving family.
I mean, that's a fair point among many. I mean, one of the biggest psychological reasons behind bullying is usually almost like a jealousy of the home sort of thing. So there is sort of that angle. But we've also seemed to be indicated that Filthy Rich, even if he might not necessarily spend a lot of time on his daughter, certainly is willing to spend a lot of money on her. So there's probably not true abuse in that sense, but maybe a degree of not paying attention to the situation.
One of the wilder theories I heard recently was that there's some that connect G1 and G4, and one I heard was that actually Surprise ended up becoming Celestia.
What was it?
What I heard actually was that Surprise ended up becoming Celestia.
I don't think that might necessarily work because, okay, just out of curiosity, how many of you guys have read the comics?
You mean the one by IDW?
Yeah, the IDW
I have
comics.
some.
Yeah. All right, so here's my next question is, how many of you guys consider the IDW comics canon, at least secondary canon? And for those of you guys who don't know what secondary canon is basically anything that the show does not inherently say is wrong can be considered right. And in one of the comics, I believe it was the Celestia comic, they actually had Surprise as a filly come into the same picture with Celestia, so I'm not sure if that would necessarily work. Yep. Anytime that there's a mistake or error in the show, it's a changeling.
Or a Mirabon clone.
Actually, that's a pretty clever way to get rid of animation errors. Is that they're just changelings.
But eat our souls.
You in the back there?
How does that explain it, facial recognition?
You're gonna have to speak up.
How does it explain occasional references to people in the show outside of Spectre series?
How does that explain, like, why people will sometimes use, or why the ponies will sometimes use the word people or man or hands?
When it's shown in the Spectre Girls, they don't have any idea what it is there.
Well, I would generally think the term people could generally be used as just a catch-all for a group of individuals, irrespective of their species. You know, a people, not necessarily people, like a person, a human. So you could end up saying, like they always like to use ponies, but people could just be a group of individuals. So, and with hands, you know, they have spike. They do have a physical characteristic by which they can identify hands. Yeah, but Equestria Girls has Flash Sentry, so it's got that going.
I think that's. I remember they said once that Spike has claws.
Okay, you there?
Does everyone remember that one frame from the Apple Pie where there was Slenderman in the background?
Yeah, Slenderman, Cat.
Yeah, M.A. Larson was talking about that one, and actually, apparently, the guy who did that got fired. One of the animation guys did put that there, and they were fired. Which I think it's great. I actually had to look several times to actually catch it, but when I did, like.
I was going to say this though, to show what its credit is worth. I did some research on it, and apparently stories of Slenderman have been dated all the way back to caveman paintings, Egyptian hieroglyphics, the English legend of the Tall Man, and with all the other mythical creatures that are in Lauren Fowles' rendition of MLP, who's to say Slenderman can be in there as well.
I heard this. I heard this really weird theory that Slenderman was trying to get to the kids that were watching the show in the first place. Instead of jumping out of the TV. That's something odd I heard. Since all the bronies were watching TV.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I heard.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet it's probably more likely just an animation error that got some poor sucker his job lost. You on the side, yeah, you on the corner.
What do you think of the fan theory that Fluttershy is actually, instead of being shy, just a masterful manipulator due to their abusive childhood?
That's the thing, is that we really haven't had her childhood explored all that much, except for, you know, one scene in, what was it, Call of the Cute? Was it Call of the Cute? Cutie Mark, thank you.
And Hurricane Fluttershy, the one way.
Oh yeah.
Ah, yes. But they were basically the same scene. They might as well have been the same scene. Like, Flight Camp really messed up Fluttershy. We can assume that. All right. You've been holding your hand up in the back on the wall there for a while?
Actually, I just put it up now.
Oh, sorry. Looked like.
I think it's odd. Trailer came out for the Country Girl sequel, and the Diamond Dogs are humans, whereas Spike was a dog. It's so ironic that Spike becomes a dog.
You really don't want to get me started on Spike as a dog, because Spike is my favorite character. I'm the world's biggest Verity shipper, and that movie ticked me off. It really did.
Sparity is probably the only cute ship. I was just saying Sparity is probably the only cute ship ever in this show.
But, yep, you?
Why would, if you are such a huge Spike fan, why would Equestria Girls piss you off, considering even though he became a feral creature for the sake of, you know, there aren't dragons in human world, why would it piss you off being that Spike was the voice of reason the entire movie? He was the one that kept Twilight alive. He was her guide in the new world.
My disappointment with Spike as a dog is that it fundamentally, basically, it says what his role in the show is, and he's a pet. He's a domesticated animal as far as the show, as far as the show writers are concerned. In every scene, they always try to go. One of the main themes that I've always enjoyed about Spike is that Spike is supposed to be like he's supposed to be the knight in shining armor. He's the guy who wants to be the noble knight. He's the dragon that wants to be a knight. And so like he's always trying to be this like better than some of the ponies that are around him. And so in the show, he's always trying to like come into his own as far as his identity goes. And so we finally get to see where his position with the ponies are in Equestria Girls. He is an animal.
It also shows the relationship between Spike and Meredith.
It's
Alright, you in the back?
Is the current Pinkie Pie actually a mirror clone?
That's one of the things that I found very, very interesting is they only gloss over how horrific of an image that, of an idea.
Well, there's the alternate ending on YouTube too.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, if you guys have ever seen Anthony C. Yeah, he did the reviewing his magic #5. He did the mirror pool, and he kind of covered in how dark and
Finally scary it is.
yeah, how creepy that actually is. And so there's kind of the whole idea is that, you know, what if you got rid of all of the Pinkie Pies? Like, where do they go when all that's done? Do they are they trapped in the mirror pool perpetually, or do they just like disintegrate into nothing?
Alright. So, you know, they said something about the mirror pool episode, and there's a few other episodes like this. You know, like, for example, there was one of the episodes, I forget which one it was, they said they were afraid of, like, the Everfree because of the fact that, you know, the clouds and stuff move by themselves there. And, you know, in that one episode, the mirror pool episode, there was a scene where Twilight's just practicing her magic on, like, you know, like, and she hits the frog and stuff, and never bothered to fix it, and, like, you know, it turns like a orange creature, right? You know, so, you know, are they scared of the Everfree because of the fact that they can't perfectly putty shape it into whatever it is they want? And
Yeah, that's an interesting. Out of curiosity, were any of you guys here at Overanalyzing MLP last year at TrotCon? You were.
Wasn't at TrotCon this year.
Cool.
I may have been, I can't remember.
Yeah, we actually kind of discussed that a little bit. Is the change in perspective amongst ponies as far as like their environment is concerned. That we can assume that because of Discord's whole thing, where his whole situation is chaos magic. You would think it'd be like more natural magic, things going about on their own. But everything is so factory produced and micromanaged with, basically it's everything we would want to happen. We would love to be able to produce our own weather. We would love to be able to, pop in and out of thin air and, find gems just by, sticking an appendage out into the ground and finding it. Flying or being able to pick out a whole apple tree just by kicking them. But at the same time, we also see the consequence of that with literally a group of ponies who are frightened of clouds moving on their own.
Conversely, possibly with Discord's raid, the Tree of Harmony is an arbitrary forest. I kind of think of when Discord reigned, he broke everything. It used to be everything was natural and moved on its own. He broke that, and harmony does not mean good or bad. It means equal. And the only place where there's harmony, I believe, is the Everfree Forest because it's the place that still moves on its own. Anything outside of the Everfree Forest that's not close enough to the Tree of Harmony is not been harmonized, and it's still broken. So things can't be.
Well, but then there's also something else that I've started to notice, is that in the first 3 seasons before the whole Plunder Seeds and the Tree of Harmony, is, you know, in the Everfree Forest, how everything was really frightening, all these big monsters, and it always appeared like there was never daytime in the Everfree Forest. It always seemed to be night until season 4 when they're at the castle of the Pony Sisters. In season 4, they literally walk about inside through the Everfree Forest to the castle. What like was this huge exploration in the first 2 episodes, Spike does in a cut scene. Like interspersing from one scene to the next, we can assume Spike went through the Everfree Forest. So I'm wondering if the Tree of Harmony was actually more containing the Everfree Forest, and the plunder seeds are actually what made it all dangerous. You know, and once we get rid of the plunder seeds, the Everfree Forest isn't dangerous anymore. You know, it's no more dangerous than any other forest.
So, that theory that you have to undertake the theory of magic on its users and let's say vision art, let's say white magic, evil white magic or in that sense. Every force could have its own magic or change, let's say, evil side.
That's an interesting idea. The main problem with the show is that they've never really given a definitive idea on what magic is. You know, that's the hardest thing with trying to come up with any sort of analysis of the show, is that it's hard to figure out how the rules work when they haven't given you any sort of rule book to even start with. You know, we do know that there are different types of magic. We know, like, love, friendship is obviously magic, but we've seen dark magic, but it's never really been explored. There's an assumption about the corrupting influence of dark magic, but yeah, and you know, there's also chaos magic and things like that. But we've also, there's other forms of magic that they haven't really described a whole lot. You know. Yeah, I mean, there's the race magics, but yeah, that's one of the interesting things. Is, you know, I've been working on like trying to explain what Star Swirl's that Star Swirl spell that turned Twilight into an alicorn was.
Good luck with that. The writers don't even know.
Well, actually, I came up with a really interesting idea with it. Is that what Cutie Mark magic basically is destiny magic. Yeah, fate or destiny. And if you read the whole spell, what the spell is actually intended to do, and they actually say about how the interconnection between the elements of harmony and the users is why they actually ended up splitting apart.
Actually, when you brought that up, I got all excited because I've had this theory for a while now.
Here we go.
That Star Swirl the Bearded is Discord.
What?
We don't need that tangent.
Yeah.
I'm one, I like that idea, I really do, but the comics have basically said that that's not the case.
Yeah.
How else would we know
That
how to
really
open the
depends on
box?
if you count the comics as canon or not.
They are canon until this show says otherwise.
Yeah, that they're secondary canon.
Until we find something that disproves the comics, you're okay.
Yeah, and even if that is the case, with what I enjoy about the idea of Star Swirl being Discord is that it just kind of has like this tragic irony about it. You know, the guy who didn't like friendship literally becomes, you know, the spirit of chaos. Although they've since gone back on it, saying apparently that Scorpan was a friend of Star Swirl the Bearded.
What?
But Star Swirl the Bearded didn't understand.
Well, they said they didn't specifically.
Yeah, I mean there is like that, but how exactly is, you know, fixing up a mess up that you started necessarily a great sign of friendship? But then again, 22 minutes, have to make an alicorn. We'll do what we have to. Alright, you in the back.
Yes.
Yeah, you.
That's actually, I was going to say that's actually enough to prove that Discord was because you call Discord and Tira interacting, and Tira is having a direct against his brother, he may have the same thing as Discord.
I suppose that could be, but they've also actually shown, you know, Star Swirl right next to, in the comics at least, with the Reflections comics, we've actually seen, you know, seen and interacted with Star Swirl in some capacity. And we've actually shown him, like, talking with a good Discord, or looking at Discord's statue. So they're clearly two individual characters.
That sucks. My fanfic's
Alternate universe Discord, Star Swirl not being Discord.
Tom, right off.
Alright, hey guys, I'm sorry. If we can keep one person talking at a time.
I'm also on the subject of Star Swirl not being Discord. We saw that Star Swirl, as we were just saying, being friends with TrotCon, and Tira, who only knew of Discord as a legend from previous times, earlier times than him, so Star Swirl came well after Discord.
Right. Yeah, and I think we can have a general, like, timing and how all this kind of works. You know, the cool thing about fan fiction is that literally anything goes. Like, I really do like the idea of Star Swirl being Discord, or you know. So in my own fan fictions, that's what I kind of am working to operate on. But and there's kind of that whole, like, the timing for how old, because 1,000 years ago was a really busy time for fiction. It really was.
It was.
Yeah, but I think what we can generally take away from it is, you know, Celestia and Luna find the elements of harmony. You know, we see Celestia and Luna fight Sombra. Celestia and Luna fight Tyrek. Celestia fights Luna. And then nothing happens for 1,000 years.
Unless they say otherwise.
Yeah, unless they say, well, actually in the comics what I like about it in the comics is that they actually show the Nightmare Forces in Celestia's, in Celestia's micro comic, when she's dealing with that elder teacher. They go back in time and they show, like, Camelot being attacked and under siege by what looks like the Nightmare Forces. So it kind of gives this idea that maybe, like, Equestria has actually been fighting Nightmare Moon for those 1,000 years. And even though she's trapped on the moon, the Nightmare Forces that were shown in the Nightmares arc have actually been constantly trying to fight with Equestria. So there's that kind of idea. You in the back.
I heard came up with a theory after removing the Swede belt holes that Luna is the most terrifying being ever. Because she can go into anyone's dream at any time and do the whole Inception thing that you don't even know what reality is anymore. How do you feel about that?
It's definitely an interesting power.
Looking at the clock.
It's definitely an interesting idea. You know, and I really enjoy it because it gives her an additional role, and it also kind of plays into, you know, what could help with her, you know, fall. Like, if you watch Pony's dreams, how many of them would probably, like, if they start fearing you, would like those dreams start to become nightmares? If Nightmare Moon is actually where they get the term nightmares from. Like, they invented the term nightmare to describe a bad dream.
That's a good theory, like in Doctor Who, where we get the term doctor from the doctor.
Right, it's the same kind of idea. Yeah.
Theory about crystals and why Sombra was so infatuated by them. Could it be that they're like some sort of lightning rod for magic, like seeing how the crystal heart resonates good magic or corrupted magic all throughout Equestria? Could that be like the crystal heart just has an internal structure so perfect that it reaches the widest radius, and all the crystal ponies resonate similarly, just to a less perfect level?
Right, because the Crystal Empire, they actually said that the emotions of the Crystal Empire are spread throughout Equestria. You know, if hate and fear take over, it gets spread throughout Equestria. So there's kind of this, like, they do kind of give that idea that there's this emotional, magical resonance of crystals. But I think it generally comes down more to, Sombra is more just kind of a mindless a mindless monster. They really didn't give him too much of a personality, unfortunately, because he really had the most potential to be an awesome character. You know, they wanted him to be like the Dark Lord Sauron, but the problem with Sauron is that Sauron had an ever-present threat throughout the whole situation. You know, they did the same thing where he was basically like this evil that was on the horizon, that was coming, that was going to cause trouble, but he ultimately didn't cause any necessary trouble. Like the Dark Lord Sauron, even if you didn't see him, his orcs were everywhere, so he was still a threat. You know, how you could have fixed the show, a really easy way you could have fixed that two-parter episode is, you know, when Shining Armor gets the crystals in his head, he gets taken over and he starts chasing around Twilight. Now you've got an ever-present threat. Yeah, and that would also work with work with the corruption angle. It would also kind of work with Twilight trying to get around with her siblings still.
That
Yeah.
was call back to the wedding. That would be cool.
But right now, we'd then be joking about how Shining Armor constantly gets his mind taken over by other characters. Yeah, you in the center. Yeah, yeah.
We're talking about Sombra and how we know, we've seen that his magic deals, or is capable of dealing with Pony's greatest fears, like what he did to Twilight and fight with his little sword. What about the fan theory that Luna's encounter with Sombra sort of was like the planting of the seed of darkness that turned her into Nightmare Moon later?
I really like that idea, and have you guys seen Fall of the Crystal Empire?
Yeah.
I love that idea for...
So good.
Yeah, that is such a great idea. Yeah,
I love their armor.
Yeah, the armor is really cool, but it also kind of gives this idea of Sombra being this more Machiavellian character, which he really should have been. There is no reason that Sombra could not have been an amazing villain. You gave yourself 45 minutes to tell this great story, and what do you get? You have crystals. That's it.
More Gak. Gak had better lines.
Yes. Gak had more screen time than Sombra. There's a serious issue here. All right. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I think what might have saved it with the Sombra thing is you compare him to Sauron. Sauron also had Saruman. Like, he had someone who was actually doing things as well. Like, I think that would have actually impacted too.
I mean, that's why Tyrek and Discord worked, is because, you know, even if Tyrek never really kind of faced the main guys, you know, Discord was around causing trouble, so there was kind of that you know, we have Tyrek and whatever he does.
Technical difficulties.
Is the microphone still working?
Yeah.
Okay. Dark. I am a dark and brooding individual.
We were talking about Sombra. He is contact to destroy us.
I think it's like the second thought. Anyway, you in the back.
Well, you can look at it away as that it's not as much about how he can be improved. One way you can also kind of look at what happened is that his process of turning to shadows basically took a toll on his mind, basically tore apart his mind when he did it. Like when he started reforming, he started looking a lot more conscious and in addition to that, the main thing that happened with Sombra, a lot of his items were pre-prepared traps that he created back when he was still in the Unicorn King form.
Right. Yeah, and one of the things that I've really enjoyed about Sombra, and I'd like to see what you guys think of this, is the idea that Sombra didn't actually have, he didn't start off with those powers. One of the ideas I like from Fall of the Crystal Empire is the line, and they kind of gloss over it.
I don't care what dark packs you've made.
I don't care what dark packs you've made. I love that idea because it gives kind of this whole, there have been other characters moving in the background. Since they've also said that, Tyrek has been out since, It's About Time, which ironically enough, it's about time. Twilight keeps on worrying about the end of the world and how the world's going to come down crashing. And while that's going on, Tyrek escapes. But nobody notices anything. So she was actually right about the whole situation. You have to worry.
You know, can I say something? Chrysalis in the royal wedding said that Equestria had more love than any other world that she'd seen.
Any other place that...
Does that mean that she's been to other places or other dimensions?
Maybe not other dimensions. I mean, one of the things I really liked about the comics, particularly with Reflections, is that they actually explain where all the weird tech comes from, how they can still use quills but also have DJ equipment. Is that Celestia and Starscroll, when they were going around world jumping, took some of the things along with them. Like, where does coffee come from in the My Little Pony universe? It comes from the Good Sombra's universe. Yeah, in the comics, Star Squirrel actually gets coffee. It asks why they don't have it, and he says, "We will now," and brings coffee and plans to bring coffee seeds. Yeah, but then we also see them traveling and looking at what looks like the World's Fair, looking at different devices and things. You also see them going prehistoric times, Flutter Rex. Yeah.
This is going to sound incredibly stupid, but how do you think Celestia keeps people behind her when she's generally never involved in problems now in the current age of the show?
Make Twilight do it.
Because she literally makes Twilight and her friends do everything. So
I think that would have to come somewhere from the structure of the Equestrian government. We've only been given glimpses into what that actually is. Because
she is actually watching them the whole time they're doing it. They're like an A SWAT sending in just so they can learn the lesson and do it. Because
You said it before, I watched you the entire way, and that one song that she sang.
Well, the proof I have you that very first day.
And in the comics, they've actually indicated that there's some form of Equestrian Congress. Because in Nay Anywhere, I think, the Shining Armor Princess Cadence, like Shining Armor's bully, his father is actually a high-ranking congressman. And then we also see in the Spy Celestia Friends Forever comic, we see the introduction of the Duke of Appaloosa. So we see these various representatives of cities. We see mayor. So there seems to be maybe Celestia isn't so much an absolute monarch as more a constitutional monarchy, which is a very interesting idea that she's more of a figurehead, except when things go down. In which case,
it bugs me that Celestia publicly got nailed to the ground by Chrysalis and in front of her whole kingdom. Nobody. Well, everyone.
There was no calling for the abdication of Celestia.
There was no post. Hey, you are not as strong as we thought you were.
Yes, but people
were still believing that she's
yeah. And we also have to remember that this is the same pony that can raise and lower the moon and sun for 1,000 years.
Yeah. Admittedly, that
I did see a video. I saw the video that explains this, but
and even a huge wrestler can be afraid of a cockroach, so...
Got me there.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any theories with the fact that when Tyrek escaped Tartarus, and when we see Tartarus again and there's 3 empty cells, did other villains escape besides Tyrek?
Yeah. Tartarus really opens this huge idea. Since
when I first heard that, I thought they said TARDIS.
Yeah, Tartarus. Yeah, because one, now fan fictions are right, and Tartarus is actually a place where they keep keep villains. So now, whenever we need a villain, where do they come from? Tartarus.
Grogar season 5.
And the Arkham Asylum.
Oh, Grogar?
The Grogar, I think. I haven't seen G1, but I've
seen pictures of him being exhausted.
Wouldn't that
Cheetah lady.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be awesome if like we saw Tambalon in season 5?
That would be great.
Yeah.
The smooths return.
Well, and the thing is that we've actually seen glimpses of various different characters. Like they've taken G1 in various concepts and tossed them into G4. You know, Tyrek is obviously the most open about it, but his reasons for doing things in the first, you know, in G1 are actually the reasons Nightmare Moon does things in G4. You know, making Eternal Night. When we see Discord's ability to like control and manipulate the minds and turn the opponents into the opposites, that's the power the Shmoos have. And of course, I love the idea that if you guys, any of you remember Levon from G1, like the crystal guy?
Yeah.
What if that's where the Crystal Empire came from? Since he's shattered into crystals, what if he's the Crystal Empire?
And there was already the Crystal Desert in that episode.
Yeah. And of course, the whole idea I like about the G1 being G4, which Tyrek showing up kind of ruins, but G4 was G1 fan fiction to begin with, so there's some licenses there, I imagine.
Alternate universe.
Alternate universes, which again, the Reflections comic helps to say that the... Yep. Basically, Reflections saves any fan theory ever, because now it's just in a mirror world.
Basically, by introducing the mirror universe, they... Think of it, because if you consider this, which this occurred to me a while ago, because there are now canonically alternate universes, this means that every alternate universe fanfic is now canon in a weird way.
Yep.
Alternate universe fanfics were canon ever since Equestria Girls.
And of course, what I really liked is that there's the Doctor in every single one, too.
Of course there is. But I actually, one thing I want to talk about, your point on how we don't see a whole lot about how magic works. Actually, we kind of do from what I can see. And it's actually sort of all in the subtitle, Friendship is Magic. Because a major point here is Finn, and this has been there from the beginning, is emotions have real-world magical consequences, things that can physically happen.
And there are even creatures that feed upon that as if it were like the only thing I can think of is what magic is in far as their universe is. If any of you guys are like know anything about physics, like you know fields, like if there's like a ever-present like an electrical field, kind of like Tesla coils, they cause an ionic field. That could be the thing I could imagine magic to be, is that the only reason they're able to use it is like it's electromagnetic magic powers.
The blood magic in Finn is emotions given form. Like that's what we can say about just about all magic we see. The changelings eat love, the Wendigos grow more powerful magically because opponents hate each other. Sombra basically feeds off of hatred and fear. And so, like, we can say that evil magic is powered by hatred and fear.
Negative emotions, whereas good magic is positive.
Which is why, and so, for example, this is one reason why Twilight's got his assignments to learn more about friendship. It's not just because Celeste wants her to grow, it probably is that, but it's like, the stronger her bonds with her friends become, actually physically the more powerful the elements become, and therefore the more secure Equestria as a land becomes. It all works.
Her magic is, it also explains why Celestia would be less powerful now, because she didn't have a very strong bond with her sister, and she probably doesn't have as strong a bond with many of the people in the land as she used to.
Because as it turns out, being worshipped as a god does not do very well for friends. All right, you three starting from left to right.
Your left or our left?
My left.
Okay, two things. First, this was talked about a bit at the G1 panel this morning on the subject of the G1 being the past of G4. It's not it's the imprisonment for the land. It's imprisonment in Greek mythology. It's also the land of the evil dead. So if you wanted to put G1 in the past. Tyrek in G1, he ended up being completely vaporized by a rainbow of light. And so, if he die.
So you're saying that
Okay, then what if we had, Tarek's still alive at the end of G4. What if G4 is the past for G1?
What if G4 is
Which also, if that's the case, if G4 is the past for G1, then that indicates that at some point there's going to be some apocalyptic event, because in G1, everything outside of that valley, the valley.
I'm not sure if that's
everything
possible.
outside the valley is complete and total wasteland. Like it's Fallout Equestria bad.
I'm not sure if that's the case, because remember in the comic books, I saw in Equestria, I saw Firefly. What was it? The Pegasus from the G1.
Right.
What was it?
Firefly.
Yeah, Firefly. I saw Firefly.
I don't know how many people actually read the Crystal Heart spell book, but in it they mention the focus of the book is around a crystal that Cadence gives some Twilight. That's this is the same type of crystal that the Crystal Heart is made of, and it's explained that it both boosts magical energy and the emotions that the person wearing it is feeling. If they're feeling positive emotion, it boosts their positive emotion, boosts their power. If they're feeling negative emotions, it boosts that, boosts their power. And it's sort of implied that there's a bit of a backstory as to where Cadence got this, and also how she became an alicorn. But the implication is that Samra was actually feeding all the crystal ponies their suffering into the Crystal Heart.
It's sort of like an addictive negative.
Yeah.
It's like a cyclical negative.
Yeah.
Which actually, if you think about it, which actually works really well into how actual emotions work, is that positive emotions generally make people feel more positive, whereas people who are negative make the people around them generally feel more negative. That's how real emotions work.
Yeah. And it also gives the various reasons why he was having them all work in the times. It wasn't that he wanted digging up whatever they were digging up. He wanted them suffering to boost his own power.
Right. That's a very understandable thing, and they give that through subtext, but subtext can sometimes be very difficult because subtext is also at some point conjecture.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, I said that you three were bingo. So you.
Well, based on what you were saying earlier, it's also possible that G4 could be the afterlife of G1.
So D3 is hell.
That makes sense. It all makes sense. No, G3.5 is hell.
Both of them. No, that's the ninth circle of hell.
Yeah, go ahead and trade it.
That's the freaking outer limits.
That's freaking Satan's Row.
And regarding the theory we were talking about being a field,
Hey guys, can we try to keep it down to one person when they're talking, and then we can maybe do a little more.
If it's a field like electromagnetism, then that makes sense. If friendship is magic, it could be the same as electricity and magnetism. It could be two different expressions of the same thing. And that can also explain the every forest. If magic was ever permitted in the field, and something happened that sucked all of the magic out of that area, and everything's going back to the way it was, that can explain that.
So, are you?
And then there's one more thing about Star Swirl. If you notice in the notebooks, Star Swirl is in the book of obscure unicorn history, and he has like a shelf in kind of that library. And as the series progresses, he gets more and more important retroactively. So he starts out this obscure unicorn with one shelf, and then he's got like an entire wing of the library, and eventually it seems like he's like
They're holding a festival in his honor.
Well, that could just be Twilight being like, hey, do you guys realize how important this
And you
person
realize
is?
that the festival occurs after she becomes a princess. So maybe she's the one that started this. Well, she wanted to start a book club. She wanted to start a book club.
She made it required learning in school.
Cause from the fancy.
The princess of education. Alright, and the guy over here on the corner, right there, and then we're gonna, him, and then we'll go to you.
Based on what you've seen, think it was the inverse, that she was actually a very good ruler, and everybody loved her, her nice, awesome, and we had parties and raves and all that kind of stuff. And Celestia became jealous, and the winner of the battle was the history book.
In the comics, we're actually given a general consensus from both Luna and Celestia, both of their perspectives, is that ultimately it doesn't matter if Luna was looked at good by the people, is ultimately what Luna thought of herself through their eyes. That she felt unappreciated by them, not that they actually treated her unappreciated.
Just like Rarity got taken over because they planted the idea that her friends didn't appreciate her, not because she was actually.
So whether she was a good or bad ruler is irrelevant. It's how she thought they thought of her. And so there's sort of this idea that, there's the idea is the reason that by the time we reach Nightmare Moon's arc is that she's an old mare's tale. She's a story told to frighten small children. She's been totally disconnected from Luna to the point where Luna apparently no one even knew that Luna was around except for just an in general reference. Like they knew there was this alicorn that ruled with Celestia, but we're not quite sure it's Luna. So there's kind of, it seems like Celestia wasn't actually trying to demonize her sister, but more separate the two individuals, to help, because, saving her career, if you will.
So, do you think that it could be likely that she was actually worse than what she's portrayed as?
I think what it probably was more is that she was more a victim of another force. That the nightmare force that they were explaining, which I'll also mention, they don't say where that comes from either. Like they make it assume as though it's just something that's always been there, which I think is a very interesting idea. If we could know, and you notice that all the things that have no explanation as to where they come from or how they got that power are all things that have to do with hate and fear. Like there's some other larger force.
In the show, she doesn't really, she's never really shown that anything approaches her. It just appears to really come out of herself.
Well, I think
it manifests outwardly.
I think the fall of the Crystal Empire helps explain some of that because, in my theory, it wasn't Sombra. It's that she inadvertently banned the Crystal Empire out of a furious rage, being Nightmare Moon.
I suppose that's possible. We don't really know anything, and anything else that we would find would generally be conjecture until otherwise stated in the comics or therein. Like, if we could actually see, I'd love to see a comic where they explain the Crystal Empire in the past. That'd be an awesome comic series. MLP comic issues 30 through 34, the fall of the Crystal Empire. You there in the corner. Yep.
I was just going to say that this guy's had his hand raised since like the beginning.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, man.
No, don't worry about it. So going back to that whole idea about why Celestia seems to be such a do-nothing ruler, my own sort of headcanon as far as that goes is that the combination of the outcome of the whole Crystal Empire thing, the fact that the entire kingdom just sort of gets wiped off the map after they intervened, and the idea that maybe their sort of cavalier attitude of running around zapping villains with the elements of harmony led to Luna's corruption, sort of convinced her that it was a bad idea for her to keep carrying on in that manner and being active and that she should step back.
But then that doesn't exactly make sense since she's sending Twilight and her friends to go do it anyway.
But she's sending a group of 6 friends instead of 1 or 2 people.
Right, because she rather than centralizing her power, she's delegating. And all good Machiavellians delegate.
Yes.
But she doesn't always use Twilight. She used Discord to help track down Kira.
And that didn't really work out well.
I know, but
that wasn't exactly the best delegation.
Spent like 1,000 years in the castle, looking constantly at murals and things depicting her basically the worst day of her life, banishing her sister to the moon and possibly just having spent 1,000 years being reminded of that constantly. That's messed up.
Once she banished Luna and one and
not necessarily the series, I mean like over the course of 1,000 years. Seeing that constantly.
Well, you right there in the brown shirt. Yeah, you. Is that brown?
Gray.
Gray? It looks brown. It's brown now.
Why do you think they bothered to put Dr. Bruce in the show if he doesn't really do anything? He's just a background pony. Because like if you were like Doctor here, you would expect him to step up and be the hero and do his doctor stuff.
You realize how big that fandom is, right? It's bigger than our fandom.
Yeah, and let's also put this into perspective. He's there because we asked, and we asked, and they gave.
He watched Dr. Holmes and it would explain everything.
Which, by the way, on Derpy, I'm extremely happy they brought back Derpy for season 4.
Yeah.
Also,
But I think that I remember Thunderhoof was pointing at her when he was saying the unappreciated. I cracked up at that.
Yeah, I love that. You in the blue shirt, and then I'm gonna go over to you after.
Just like an observation during this season 4 finale, it took T-Rex to steal all the magic from the unicorns, Pegasus, and ponies before he could fight the elephants. So it's like it takes the combined efforts of all the other tribes before, races, to defeat Celestia and all.
Yeah, and when you think about it, Celestia's plan doesn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Okay, we all are.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, if all the tribes
In how powerful they are.
Yeah, together they potentially could overthrow Celestia if they were to come together.
Yeah.
Sort of like.
But this is also these are also the same creatures that ran and hide from a zebra, a thing that looks like a pony.
I'm just saying the potential is there.
Speaking of Sakura, I think she also has a good connection to the Evermore Reports of why she lives there. It's normal to her own home world, which doesn't have that much passion.
But we haven't seen any other places beyond we haven't seen anywhere beyond the Changeling Kingdom, and in the latest, Friends Forever comic with Rainbow Dash and Trixie, we've seen a Diamond Dog Kingdom.
I just think it's kind of odd that she kind of lives there and is okay with it, and has something to do with her home.
And you?
I've been waiting a while, so I have a few things.
Okay, cool.
First thing is about the idea of a separate field for magic. I think they would take magic as just another field, like a strong nuclear force and electromagnetism. And the fundamental particle of that, I coined the word manon for mana. And secondly, as for the chronology of 1,000 years ago, well, Scorpion was friends with Starscroll the Bearded, and Starscroll the Bearded was Clover the Clever's teacher. So, was the founding of Equestria around this time as well?
I think the weird thing about the founding of Equestria, because one of the things you also have to imagine is the Grand Galloping Gala. Where is the Grand Galloping Gala? Because that actually gives a good explanation for the timing of everything. The Grand Galloping Gala is basically Equestria's Thanksgiving celebration. The unicorns built Canterlot, and as a big celebration, they got all the other tribes together and threw a giant party. We see in the Reflections comic, which shows some time in the past, that Celestia and Starsquirrel are in a Canterlot under construction. So Canterlot probably wasn't actually built until just after the lunar rebellion. And we've all
Rift.
the
show.
Yeah, they call it the Celestial Rift. Great name, by the way. Yeah. Testing 1, 2, 3, which gave the whole EUP guard and giving kind of the history of all those things. They gave a lot of different terms and showed where all those things are going. And so I'm actually thinking that the founding of Equestria might have been an event that occurred, that Celestia and Luna actually took themselves out of that little myth. They're the Santa Clauses, and they took themselves out of that fictional story.
They wanted the ponies to believe that they could come together without that thing.
Right. Which actually, if the idea that the founding of Equestria occurs maybe very, very shortly before fighting Discord, just before then it suddenly makes sense that Celestia and Luna would actually have a flag if they did actually become the rulers. So they did actually have their flag and whatnot. Because that was one of the major concerns with,
Yeah.
with the whole.
Why would they have them on the flag?
Why would they have them on the flag if they weren't there? So maybe they were there, and just in a more minor capacity, like after the Wendigos, like almost immediately after, Discord shows up, screws things around for a while.
I think someone in the show would actually notice.
Maybe. We're gonna have to start getting some of these hands. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say something. I wrote something beforehand. While the show focuses on more lighthearted themes, many of our ideas will never be seen outside of fan fiction. Fan fiction allows for more mature and complex themes and plots. I always like some of the themes that Twilight is at risk to succumb to the allure of power. She seems to have all the qualities of a supervillain or tyrant. Non-specific general talent of magic, intelligence, paranoia, obsession, and neurotic tendencies. In the canon, Twilight is constantly being beefed up in terms of power. It seems that if someone keeps getting more power, they are at risk of exercising their power to try and improve equestrian. When you exercise power on a grand scale, you will always be a tyrant to someone. Everyone has a little bit of evil in them without realizing it. If one person or pony has the power to enact anything they believe, no matter how well intentioned, there will always be conflict because it is impossible for that person to have perfect ideas and judgment. I like the idea of a struggle Twilight has of whether to take the quick and easy route of solving problems with her power and influence. It seems to me that Twilight would make interesting and complex antagonists.
I definitely agree as well, and I'd like to introduce everyone to the founder of the Tyrant Sparkle Fanfiction.
Come visit, join.
Yep. Yeah, I do like that idea, because, the Nightmares arc showed that making one of the main six a villain is a very good, very dramatic story, and I really enjoy that idea of, taking the friendship and splitting it up. The split, the breaking of the fellowship is a very, very interesting idea. You in the back with the blonde hair. Yeah.
In the season 4 finale, I'm wondering what was the point of Celestia even giving her powers, all the power, alchemy power from Twilight Sparkle, if it was completely pointless because they were hoping that she was a secret alicorn and they had her turning into an alicorn in glass and Discord already knew.
Yeah, here's my idea with that, is that Tyrant taking the Earth Pony, Pegasi, and Unicorn magic actually increased his magic far beyond the others, because when Twilight fights Tyrant, she doesn't surpass him, they're evenly matched. She has the power of 4 alicorns and she's evenly matched. So I'm wondering if the idea might actually be that Tyrant could only absorb the magic of creatures weaker than he is. So maybe he had to surpass the others, and that's also with the addition of Discord's magic. So, if he hadn't absorbed Discord's magic, maybe they could have all fought him. But maybe with the addition of Discord's magic, having all of that magic placed into a single individual would put them on the same level, that he could not steal Twilight's magic except willingly. Alright, you, Rainbow Dash.
In Rarity's Manhattan, she was trying to get a cat, and they totally shunned her and told her to go get her out of there. Why wouldn't they recognize her as the newest crown princess, and not okay, we can get locked away in a dark deep dungeon somewhere, instead of totally.
Maybe he was a brony in denial. Actually, that would be an interesting idea. Is what if there's republicanism? Republicanism in Equestria.
Conservatism or actual republicanism?
Like British republicanism. Like in a monarchy, republicanism is basically anyone who wants to get rid of the monarchy and replace it with a republic. Yeah, with a republic or a more democratic style of governance. We've never actually seen any political individuals. Yeah, and I don't think we're ever going to see them. I mean, Inkwell is probably the most politically motivated individual we've ever seen, and he's an assistant.
What about Mayor Mayor?
Mayor Mayor is basically the mayor from The Simpsons.
Mayor Mayor is the mayor from Powerpuff Girls.
At this point, even more so, Twilight seems to have more authority over the town than the actual mayor at this point.
I think how it ends up working is that it's basically the same as there is the President of the United States, and there's the mayor of Washington, D.C. You know,
Organizing everything, just hand it over.
Here you go. There you go, OCD.
We're doing it anyway.
and trying to see you in the back and then the person right in front of you.
Okay, something I that was we were talking about earlier about how Celestia doesn't seem to do anything, and delegation was brought up. I'm wondering if there might be a number of other groups beyond just the main six that are actively out doing things like the whole thing with Daring Do actually going out and fighting her own villains. That we were shown that that's actually happening, and no one else in Equestria really realizes it's real. And I'm wondering if there might be
Equestrian Special Forces.
Yeah, basically, like
we have SEAL Team 6, we have Indiana Jones.
before they're happening.
Yeah, here's the thing about that. Like, look at all the stuff that happens to Ponyville, like monster attack and terrorist and all that. This happens over the course of like a year. Ponyville's a small place, and we have no reason to believe that crazy shit happens there any more often than everywhere else. So maybe all of Equestria, there is constantly this crazy stuff going on, and that's where...
And seeing as how in the comics, when the Secretariat comic came, you know, Ponyville got attacked by changelings, Manhattan got attacked by the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and, you know, Camelot got attacked by gigantic mutant cockatrices.
So people who say Celestia does nothing, no, she's off making sure everything
Because we know that there's the EUP Guard, we know that there's the Wonderbolts, which is basically like the Blue Angels, but with guns.
Not with guns, you know,
there's the fan theory that Fancy Pants is actually a spy. We have Daring Do, and ironically enough, Daring Do fighting Aoi Zodal. Daring Do's story, you know, a lot of people got angry when Daring Do was revealed. She's a real pony! And everyone in one voice said, come on!
By everyone, you mean Tommy Oliver?
Yes.
Brony? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, the two gods of analysts. Who I think might be overrated. I'm an analyst, I'll deal with it. Okay.
Dangerous.
But what I loved about it is that it was the first indication of a history before Equestria. You know, they talk about like the Quetzalcoatl Empress and things like that. These historical events, like ancient, like basically, they were basically Aztecs, the Aztec individuals, prehistoric civilizations that might have existed before Equestria. That's the first glimpse we've ever seen of them.
What if Sombra was a knight of Celestia?
Alright, yeah.
The MLP analysis subreddit. One of the theories I saw in there was for how ponies can pick things up with their hooves. It says that ponies can pick things up with their hooves, but they can also pick things up with their horns and with their tails
and their wings. I always thought they just had invisible fingers.
The theory is, in mythology, a unicorn's horn is made of a substance called alicorn, which would presumably have some similar characteristics to keratin. So what if the hooves and all those structures and ponies are actually made of alicorn? So they can channel small amounts of magic through their wings and through their hooves.
That's what I was actually thinking of, is that what if the races, like what your specific race, like, and when we say race, we're like Earth Pony, things like that, the types. That's kind of the weird thing, is when we use race with ponies, we're actually referring to, you know, what appendages or lack thereof they possess. Like, what if that's the concentration of alicorn in their bodies? You know, which also raises the question of, what about ponies that have, say, like with any physical attribute? What if you have a disability in that regard? What if you have an alicorn deficiency? What occurs then?
That could explain
a unicorn without a horn. What would that be like? A unicorn that couldn't use magic.
Lyra?
What about vacuums? What about vacuums?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
How Poison Joe affected Twilight?
What about vacuums? How can we explain explain them in this
Oh,
way.
dare you on cell phones on you?
That's
But you know, I think that...
Interrupting my panel, how rude.
You know, I think the whole alicorn thing can explain Pinky sense. What if that's how she channels her alicorn energy, and then can explain Pinky sense?
Yeah, the general consensus I've seen to find on what Pinky sense is the one given by Josh Scorcher, the Fiery Joker. If any of you guys have seen his reviews. Yeah, Fama Question. He basically gave the idea that it was an extension of her cutie mark. It was an extension of her Earth Pony magic. That the Earth Pony magic is they have a more in tune connection with the world around them, the Earth. So the idea is that she actually gets like basically psychic connections from the Earth around her, various different circumstances and events, as sort of some kind of precognition, a spider sense.
I heard that.
So good.
Well, maybe, you know, she just has cheat codes to life. That's the game. I had cheat codes.
You and back. I'm really trying to avoid when I talk to you guys of saying you and the beard, because then all of you would raise your hands. Alright, sorry.
This is going back to the Crystal Empire Sombra event. As much as I hate to blame Discord for everything, Sombra is black and gray. He's a king. What if he was the Crystal King?
The good King Sombra.
Yeah. What if the good King Sombra just never turned evil? Like in that alternate. So you know, this universe did. And then at the end of the Crystal Empire arc, the ponies refer to Cadence as the Crystal Princess, as if this is a thing that everyone knows of. What if she's a descendant of King Sombra?
What? Or maybe the reincarnation? Or
Never
maybe the
really learned where she
reincarnation.
came from.
Maybe not necessarily reincarnation. Sombra's still kind of alive.
Maybe. It's
Essentially, awesome.
But like we have the pseudo evidence that
It runs the shadow.
Okay, I'm going to take a quick picture and a poll. I'd like you guys to lower your hands for a second, and then I'm going to actually ask you guys to raise your hand when I get the picture ready. Stupid phone. I got this phone just a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still trying to figure out how it works.
Ain't technology great?
No! Alright, how many of you guys want to see a comic of the Crystal Empire in the past? I thought as much.
Everyone?
Yeah, everyone.
We all just want more world building.
Yes.
World building is amazing, and that's why I love Season 4. Season 4 did probably the most world building out of any of them.
If you like world building, look up the fanfic Xenophilia. That's actually...
Here we go.
Hey, it has good world building. That's all look at it. I don't prefer any of the other parts, but it has good world building.
Never read it. What? Never read it.
Yeah, I just skip past the plot.
Yeah, yeah.
Going back to Pinkie Pie and Pinky Sense, one idea of that is, remember in MLP, friendship is magic. Pinkie Pie is friends with everybody. Therefore, she's literally almost a walking next to magic. But she's not a unicorn. So she doesn't have any way of actually directing the magic in any way, shape, or form. So it's basically enacting in chaotic ways. Because she has no
So
way
basically her
of
magic, she is an interlocking web of magic. That she's basically the equestrian internet. She's attached to everyone psychically, and therefore gets
friendship party.
The man.
Alright, I wanted to touch on background ponies, but I'm going to hold off on that for a minute. I wanted to talk a little bit about the monetary system in Equestria and how we're not really sure how this works. I mean, it seems to be sort of a socialist society where people are semi-communist almost. You're assigned a job based on your destiny, based on your cutie mark.
Not really assigned a job, because someone gave me the general consensus with, what is Verity's talent?
Basically,
Finding gems. What does that have to do with fashion? Not a thing.
Well,
I feel like
she puts said gems on her.
She puts her gems on her clothes.
I feel
but
like her
talent is
magic.
finding
I feel like
gems.
her magic also helps her get in tune with her designs. But my big thing is, if you have a talent, say that isn't very, that can't be monetized, say like Rainbow Dash, she's
she's a speedster.
No, she's fast. You can't. She's just not really making. Well, she doesn't have a job. She clears the weather.
Unless she walks on a treadmill and generates power for the city at the generator, she wouldn't really be of much use.
But you
to
see
the
that
city.
Applejack sells apples and Rarity sells dresses, and they use that money supposedly to buy things that they need. How do these? That's just. I'm wondering, like, how do these ponies that don't really do jobs for money?
What I notice about, I think what that actually has to do with is it's interlocked with the education system of Equestria, which is far better than our own. Far better. Because their education system, as we can see with the Cutie Mark Crusaders and the apparent lack of actual participation on Cheerilee's part, Cheerilee spends maybe a couple of hours teaching them reading and writing and what cutie marks are. Not actually how to get them, but what they are. And then they spend the rest of their time going out and destroying half of Ponyville. So their education system seems heavily focused on, exploration and self-discovery as opposed to
sitting there and learning about it.
as opposed to standardization and tests, like the U.S. does it.
Like how Twilight would love it to be, but she could never succeed.
Right. So I think what it actually ends up being is that they don't give you a job, but they give you the freedom to figure out what your talent can be useful for. And of course, the reason the Cutie Mark Crusaders won't ever get their cutie marks yet is because they've only gotten halfway. They are trying all these different skills, but it isn't them trying the skills that gets them their cutie marks. It's them realizing that that's their special talent. They're so busy looking for what their special talent is that they haven't looked inward enough to figure out what it is.
I think possibly Rainbow Dash.
They already know what their special talents are. They just haven't, they haven't acknowledged that amongst themselves.
Which makes me think. What about what was his name? Rich Fancy Pants or something like that? If his abilities have a lot of money, how did he get it?
Family.
Clearly. Being a
Yes, in a monarchical society, rich families stay rich.
Maybe just a monarchical society. It's true here too.
In an oligarchical society, rich families stay rich.
Any society would stay rich.
Yeah, and to go on the equestrian economy, let's just acknowledge one thing for a second. 2 bits for a cherry and 5 bits for an apple. They have a really messed up sense of supply and demand. Yeah. Well, I mean, the only thing I've seemed to be able to think that people work with in most fan fictions with the bit is that it's like the Euro coins, is that they're different denominations, and they say bit as just a catch-all, like there's 1 bit and then there's a 10-bit, and they look exactly the same because, it's flash animation, and it's easier to just make a single generic bit.
Okay, on the topic of screwed up supply and demand, we have handbags that cost $7,000. So who are we to talk about screwed up supply and demand?
That is true.
Fair enough, and we have shoes that are made for a nickel that cost several $100s.
Yeah, so I don't know if we can
Well, they're made for a nickel because they're made with slave labor. Hope you like your Jordans. All right. Yeah.
In lieu of a few details given around the show, like in songs and the naming of Rainbow Dash's pet turtle tank, do you think Equestria would be capable of having a modern military force, and you said they don't show up just to be out of context to being family friendly?
I entirely think that is the case. although after the last season finale, maybe they used to have tanks and guns, and they realized at a certain point that it was all moot when you can shoot gigantic laser beams out of your forehead. Maybe tanks and guns and nuclear weapons are obsolete.
Well, I bet the Earth ponies probably use tanks.
Oh, and plus, there's also the indication that the term bullet and tank are used, and bullet and tank are actually just in general. They're not terms that came from tanks and guns. Bullet and tank were things that existed beforehand, and they were applied to those inventions at a later point.
Unless you're describing your turtle as a gigantic storage tank.
And because there have been tanks since the 1300s. Leonardo da Vinci designed a tank.
Like, what are you suggesting the tank is?
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Sorry, my voice is shitty. I screamed a lot last night.
Oh my god.
I had a panel last night. But out of curiosity, as an analyst and a fan theorist, where do you personally, where do you decide to draw the line? It's like, for example, bullets, tanks, they're for the viewer to have, written in as a viewer, to have a reference point. Where do you draw the line when you decide this is just because it is a literary work and it's a reference point versus it actually being world building and applying to world building? For example, Pinky Sense for a long time before season 4 and things like that, where they really decided to take the narrative off of purely Twilight and all that bullshit and do a lot of world building, as you had said in season 4. Pinky Sense was just kind of a shitty joke. It was a joke. It was used in that episode. It wasn't really brought up again
until the mysterious Ne'er-do-well, but because that episode is generally not looked upon very well by a lot of people, it's generally kind of
and it was brought up as a way for the writers to say I used my Pinky Sense and all that good thing. So they brought it up again, yeah.
It became a way to explain. And that's why Pinky did that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, and so
and continuity is an amazing thing, and that's actually where a lot of the whole with analysis and where all that comes in is. You're right in that. At what point do we say yes? This is clear evidence that we can take from general. Like this is clear evidence, and they are totally implying that, and which is maybe it's this. It's generally a lot of ideas can come from consensus, what we think of as good ideas, and any analyst ultimately has to use their own perceptions and their own knowledges. I have my own personal biases that come through how I see the world, and it comes from how I see and how the My Little Pony show and fandom speak to me. I like the Fall of the Crystal Empire for how it explains the crystal. The fall of the Crystal Empire, because it fits in with my perceptions on how that would go about, how those characters would interact in that situation. But for someone else who's gone through their own experiences, through any critic, every critic is unique and in their own way, and not necessarily wrong, unless they're actually going against something that is considered canon, in which case that is the general regard. If they outright say, like they say EUP guard, so that is an actual thing that did occur. But until then, we had a general idea of how their military was set up. Until we literally got an episode in season 4 that explained not only what their military was, but the history, the leaders of that.
And they look like people from the 80s and 90s, like respectively going upwards in each era. I noticed that. It's like, wait, isn't that the 60s?
Yeah, we were given kind of we were kind of given an indication of their military sense. We've been slowly but surely. It's kind of like an Adventure Time where we give a lot of theories about how this world works, but over time they're slowly but surely revealing more. Some of it's in the background, and it's allowed us to question what would go on, what's going to happen. We see in Adventure Time episodes leading up to season 5.
Who cares?
Season 6. we constantly see scenes of Finn with robotic arms and mechanized arms and whatnot. So a lot of fans came up with the idea, oh, he's going to lose his arm. Cut to season 6, the first, the end of the second episode, and he actually loses his arm.
Yeah.
They give it back in like the 8th episode. But,
Crazy.
Yeah.
That was weird.
Yeah. Pendleton Ward really can't stick it to me.
I haven't seen that far yet.
Silence River songs, we didn't ask you.
I'm sorry.
I haven't actually been able to keep up, so don't worry.
Well, it is Adventure Time. It's hard to keep up even if you do watch the show.
Yeah.
All right, I got to start it. Yeah.
In kind of to go off of what Phil was saying, maybe some of the words that they use to describe concepts like bullet, your application, just like the way that they say things is just a way for it to bridge the story of what is actually happening to the language and the way that we perceive the world. We are a world that has had quite a bit of world. That is the way that we perceive it, and the way our language is
Yeah.
perception, but it's just how they translate it.
Yeah.
Not literally what it is.
So it's kind of like how with J.R.R. Tolkien, the terms and words used in Lord of the Rings aren't actually what they're that's just what J.R.R. Tolkien could translate from Elvish.
Yeah.
Since in the original Lord of the Rings, the idea behind Lord of the Rings is that it was actually an ancient myth written in Elvish and then translated into English by J.R.R. Tolkien. That's kind of how he operated with it.
Like magic, I don't think you'd be able to be able to see.
Right.
Or like something with the pinky sense. It's just or pinky actually playing slices and then bouncing. Like that's just the way that it's
a cartoon.
Yeah, and of course there's of course there are things where they can't translate, like the amniomorphic spell that Starswell the Bearded came up with, which apparently could either be something that assisted in childbirth or a very, very long and complicated Harry Potter joke.
But there's travel universes.
The guy with the beard. Sorry, it's getting hard. It's getting hard at this point. Like, there's so many different people on the back.
Say, Rainbow Dash does have a job. She leads the weather team.
She is the captain of the, and that's the thing, is that there is a disconnect between your actual occupation and your special talent.
Yeah.
In the American way that we deal with things, we constantly have this idea that what you're good at is what you should get paid to do. But that's not necessarily the case in the My Little Pony universe. For them, it seems much more as you do what you have to make a living, but you work for your living. You don't work as your living.
Yeah. On that note, a theory that I read about Rarity's special talent is that her special talent is bringing out the beauty in things, whether that be finding gems inside of the geode or under the earth, or making a dress to accentuate someone's natural appearances.
I'm thinking about it. Pinkie Pie's ability has nothing to do with her G mark. She works for parties.
The idea is uncovering the gems within. Yeah, that kind of idea. The diamonds in it.
Metaphorical G marks.
Yep. All right.
Okay. Getting back to Celestia's role in Equestria, what if it was like, as a diamond-styled mage, that she doesn't really intervene unless it becomes necessary? That the reason that the main six don't know about Daring Do and Alizol is because up until that point it hasn't been necessary, because Daring Do would need any help up until that point.
But Celestia didn't have any role in that though. That's more of just in general accident.
I know it's an accident, but almost everything else that Celestia's been involved in, she's almost always known exactly what to do.
Except for, ironically, an invasion of Canterlot. She literally spends all of her time. So she's clearly not on.
I got this, guys. Go.
Of course.
Engineer shows up.
Yeah. But of course, there's also the whole thing: is the Trollestia is a thing. It's canon as far as magical mystery carries because she clearly knew that she had to have known the invasion was going there because she followed Twilight around all the time.
But didn't they discuss that in the Friends Forever?
She has a series on DVD.
She has Twilight Sparkle on 24/7 surveillance. The NSA would love Celestia.
Wait, if she has her own 24 hours surveillance, does that make her Molestia too? She's looking at her plot at the same time.
Alright, yeah, so, yeah. Alright. Oh, hey guys, I can't hear.
I haven't read the comics, but you were saying how they Fluffy and Star Troll were war comics. Couldn't that explain that why they use words like what and paint? They could have also brought back words like pain and every piece of that.
Yeah, that's another thing is that you know, if they know where in the Equestria Girls movie, which as much as we would like it not to be, is canon, you know, it does give an explanation as to how Celestia and Luna are familiar with.
Yeah, you'll know about this world more than I do, but she's already been there.
Yeah, she knows about the world. She's never actually been there. But you in the back. The world's biggest natural love battery.
Energizer Bunny Rabbit of crystalness.
You're back.
Two things. First, on the subject of bullets and the words, the term bullets is crazy back. It's been used as far back as when slingshots were used as actual main military weapons.
Yeah, like the rocks they would use were bullets.
Yeah, and that goes all the way back to biblical times. And those the words have obviously evolved over time, but so it's not just guns like that where the word comes from. So if they ever had used slings as weapons, they would still have the word. And the other thing on the subject of poison joke, I've seen this brought up once or twice, but I've never really seen it really thought about it. If it might be connected to the plunder scenes. Because the poison joke fits Discord's pre-reformed Discord sense of humor perfectly.
Yeah, and we're kind of given the distinction that there's maybe there's a difference between natural magics, like the Every Force, for the most part, seems like very natural magics. Things work on their own, animals work on their own, they go through their own life cycles independent of ponies. And then there's more willful, chaotic magics, things like that. So I'm kind of having to wonder at what in the Everfree is chaotic, since that's also where the final battle between Celestia and Discord took place. Because that's where the plunder seeds were. He tossed a handful of plunder seeds at Celestia and Luna.
Well, the plunder seeds were where he had created them to seek out the Tree of Harmony specifically. So they wouldn't. So even if he had tossed them onto the ground halfway across the world, they still would have traveled underground and tried to eat the Tree of Harmony.
Right, but his initial plan, they had to have been somewhere close, because his initial plan was the moment he died, or wait, that's a dark. Yeah, the moment he got stoned. The moment he got stoned, that they would, kill the Tree of Harmony.
Which within a few days.
Yeah, within a few days or so, not 1,000 years.
Or however long else it was. Something else I've seen brought up is possibility that when Discord is active and would take place timeline, he actually and actively broke time and history itself. So there's chunks of history that are just sort of scattered all over that basic time frame that aren't actually happening in order anymore.
I think the main issue actually with the whole is he didn't break time. It's actually something much simpler than that, and it's simply, you know, history is a very fickle thing. History only stays as accurate as the people who are alive to tell it. And the moment people start, you know, there aren't anyone around from the 1600s, and because of that, our knowledge of the 1600s only is as good as what is written down. And we know that people are very inaccurate when they write things down. Things get lost, things get misplaced, the VA can show us anything like that.
Of course, there's the problem that Celestia is still around, and ponies can ask her.
Yeah, but when you're deified, you tend to not get too many people asking you for things.
And also, she could forget.
Yeah.
1,000 years worth of memories, and also she can't be everywhere at once.
Right, 1,000 years, she's not omnipotent. She's very powerful. She can observe people if she wants, but she's not omnipotent. If she were, the Candlelight Wedding would not have occurred. Unless, of course, she actually used the Candlelight Wedding as some huge, gigantic plot to actually help teach Twilight something.
Yeah, that's exactly what she did. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. I'm great.
Yeah, but what was the lesson? If you suspect someone of being evil, don't trust them no matter what. They are unequivocally evil. Suspect them of everything. Friendship is magic.
The first time Twilight did something right that Celestia got wrong. That seemed to me actually really cool. Since, like, the first point that Twilight actually does better than Celestia.
A fact that will continue to rear its ugly head time and time again. Yeah, I know, but that's the thing I've noticed about Twilight is, and this actually works in a nice theme with My Little Pony and with life in general, is that the succeeding generations, the successors of authority and power, correcting the mistakes of the predecessors. You know, Twilight's constantly having to clean up after Celestia's screw-ups. And let's be fair here, they are Celestia's screw-ups.
I actually might contest that.
How do you solve Discord's problem? A sledgehammer. Discord is done.
No, he's not. See, okay, because Discord's good at, he's hiding, he's getting away from people. You swing Sledgehammer at him, he splits into two Discords, does some weird crap for a while, then reforms because he's Discord. The problem isn't that necessarily he is weaker than, or that he's not more powerful than Celestia. It's Celestia doesn't know where to shoot the bazooka.
Celestia didn't have the power for the
My guess would be all of it.
a minor correction, they actually never say that Discord was turned to stone 1,000 years ago. They say it happened long ago. So we don't know when it happened. It could have been 3,000 years ago for all we know.
We know that that's the thing. Yeah, again, that is kind of the weird thing, but it seems to have to occur at some point in there. It has to occur at some point between the founding of Equestria. And the thing is that we don't actually know if Discord came before or after the Wendigos, but Wendigos indicate the founding of Equestria, and the Celestial Rift indicates when Canterlot gets found, or right before Canterlot gets founded, because the comics show that right after Luna gets sent to the moon, they show Canterlot under construction.
I think they might have said at one time that Discord was doing stuff to Equestria, so then Equestria would actually exist for them to do stuff to it.
Yeah, that's the point where it says like he reigned over Equestria or caused chaos.
Yes.
But they also indicate that he attacked unicorns, earth ponies, and Pegasi equally, as if to say that they weren't, as if they were somewhat independent at that time. We know that there's an alliance between the earth ponies, Pegasi, and unicorns, a tentative alliance in the Heartswarming Eve story. Where did that pop up? Unless maybe they fought Discord? Fighting Discord, they made a tentative alliance to survive.
They formed Equestria before Discord came in. So at that point, Equestria was founded and they were essentially unified, or at least a
politically.
Well, but then why make the point of separating as to he attacked Earth ponies, Pegasi, and unicorns as if they were independent as if they were independent.
I mean, you can say he attacked men and women alike. That doesn't mean that men and women are separate countries.
Okay, we got about another 25 minutes or so.
I think that was
All right. Hey guys.
I think a year could be a arbitrary measurement of time because whenever they're measuring time, it's like really definite.
How many years will move? Yeah.
Because how do years work when the sun is like?
Well, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. And I actually, yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. You're giving me that evil eye. Yeah, you get to go now. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just going to mention something about the names of the characters from the show. A lot of the names either have to do with the character's personality or their talents. For example, Fluttershy is a very shy person. The Cakes luckily grew up to a bakery or whatever.
Thank goodness for that. Wouldn't it have sucked if Mr. Cake was actually a mechanic?
So I'm wondering if
His name's ironic.
there has to be some sort of way for the ponies to be able to determine a person's either talent or personality from birth, essentially.
So, like, the
Otherwise-
parents have an inclination as to what their, like, and hey, that's why Apple Bloom has such a hard time figuring out her destiny. Her parents never told her. Come on! And actually, that would also explain why Scootaloo never got told. And Sweetie Belle.
They're nowhere to be
Because
found.
clearly her parents aren't involved in the situation.
To counter naming conventions, you could have a birth name and a name that you could.
So like a confirmation name. It's a cute
have a
name.
birth name and a confirmation name.
One head canon I've actually heard is that the Peace and There is actually where they have to change their name.
Yeah, because.
And of course, we do have family names too. You know, there are the pies, the cakes, the sparkles. Hey, what? Shining armor sparkle?
That would sound weird, yeah.
Francis
Sparkling armor.
Maybe his name was Shining Sparkle, and then he got the big shield on his flank, and he said, "Shining Armor, that's my name."
Or like that's a shining armor, but when he built up more shining armor of the House of Sparkle, or like whatever.
Although, how weird is your name if it's like Applejack Apple? Yeah, you. Yeah, you.
Since we've been talking several times about how Celestia is kind of a hands-off ruler, like Celestia doesn't really seem to do much of anything. It seems that way, that she doesn't get involved, she tries not to a lot of times. But at the same time, it seems like behind the scenes, she's doing all the manipulating to make things happen the way she wants. I mean, she sends Twilight to Ponyville with not even 24 hours before Nightmare Moon comes back to make friends and access the magic of friendship. She keeps all of Twilight's friendship reports and then just magically happens to have them on hand to use them to undiscord Twilight. You know, it seems like she's always playing the chess game behind the scenes to do what she wants without having to get involved. Until a Canterlot wedding where, oh no, the army showed up in her throne room and she didn't know, so she has to try and get involved. And she gets slapped down either because she's taken by surprise, because Chrysalis was feeding on Shining Armor's love and was amped up, or because she was in a place in a castle where she couldn't use her full power because there's all these casualties around. She can't get rolling forward players around the room.
No, she can't just send. She just can't send a concentrated beam of sun down and just
You can't
bake.
do like Legend of Zelda.
She can't salt the earth. She can't salt the earth.
No, it seems like Celestia is not really an uninvolved ruler, as she prefers to just work behind the scenes.
She's Superman. She lives in a world of cardboard. Yeah.
I think I'd like to speak on that point with Celestia being uninvolved. We see in the Canterlot wedding, as soon as Twilight sees Cadence into a little sunshine, and Kate looks at her like, what are you doing? She knows something's off that instant because she was close with her when she was younger, and so she knows her personality.
Whereas Celestia doesn't seem to know anything.
doesn't seem to notice a difference, and she made her a princess.
She's
How
their
close
adoptive
could
niece.
she possibly be to her if she doesn't even notice a full-on change in personality that Twilight noticed the minute she saw her again after years?
It could be well, Celestia just doesn't know the Twilight after.
And there's also you also have to realize that there is a level of willful ignorance. You want to believe that someone is better. You know, Twilight is by nature skeptical. You know, the what was feeling Pinky Keen kind of indicated that Twilight is skeptical about anything she can't explain. Whereas a lot of the others seem to generally just go with things. They're willing to brush it off. They're willing to put everyone else in Equestria seems to be willing to just toss things aside. You know, the ponies of Equestria, it's a good thing no one invades them because, like, if there was an actual genuine army, I think a lot of them would just turn tail and run. They're herd animals, like even worse than we are when it comes to panicking. Equestrians follow the French model of military warfare.
Yes. Oh crap! Run away.
Belgian meat shield.
What do you think the transnational relations are? I mean, from the official map of Equestria, there are other nations where dragons and griffins are dominant, but
you know, I've come up with my own kind of headcanon theory with that. Is that we've noticed that for the most part, ponies seem to be very, for lack of a better term, xenophobic when it comes to anything that's not pony, which seems to indicate a very homogenous society, one that doesn't generally come into contact with other creatures, and that generally only happens in extremely isolationist countries. In countries that, for the most part, not only stay out of other people's business, but genuinely try to avoid contact with other races or other cultures.
Like with zebras, yeah, they do that, but where else? I mean, they know griffins, they're fine with them.
Well, we also noticed with the dragons is their initial reaction with the dragons is to we've never actually seen indications of racism because obviously children's show. Yeah, Zecora did in fact give her. Yeah, but we don't. Yeah, but we don't see, no dogs or dragons allowed. We don't see signs like that.
They make derogatory remarks against donkeys.
Although in irony, Equestria girls did do no dogs or dragons allowed.
There's one that's like, is it really good idea to say everybody with mules?
Yeah. The mules are like below status. They're like the serfs. Like they're not
I think we've only seen like 3 mules.
But they're always, again, they're used almost like as a joke. Like they're like.
Again, though, is it a joke? I think it's more the sake of having a joke. They were having a joke.
Or is it maybe? And there's and you guys just brought up a very interesting thing. I like that little discussion because it goes back onto your question of how much is just, you're being a mule about this. We know what the term mule is. Is that just being used as a joke because that would make us laugh? Or is that actually an indication of some kind of latent...
I'm so hungry I could eat character trait.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's a meta joke.
Yeah. Is it a meta joke to kind of speak to us, or is it an actual indication in the story of some kind of latent prejudice?
Well, it's not. It's not like mules are known.
Right.
And to continue with that question of other nationalities, other nations, there might, is there any data on all about other Draconic besides Discord?
I love that. I love that question, and I love that idea. Is why do we have a what is Discord? He's a Draconicus. Well, what is a Draconicus? Discord. How many species do you know have only one representative of what they are?
Like a species here in our mythology, there's only one Pegasus.
Yeah, but his name was Pegasus. So why is Discord not just called Discord? He's called Draconicus, as if there was actually a creature known widely as a Draconicus, as if he's not the sole representative, but a model of a larger group.
Maybe. Actually, at one point I did create an interesting theory about this. One of the things you need to consider is that Discord was defeated a very, very long time ago, meaning there would be multiple generations of ponykind that had no idea what Discord even was. However, the statue was very freely on display. One of the things that I like to think is that ponykind, being ignorant of exactly what Discord was, almost invented a mythological figure entirely around the statue.
Yeah. That we don't see Draconicus, we don't see things like this around, so this couldn't have just been a single thing. It has to be a whole race of them. Like dragons, I don't know dragons. I like that. I do like that. I do love that idea too. And then, you know, we have Tyrek and Scorpan, but we've seen that they're two separate, they're two like single representatives of their own species as well. Which makes me think is maybe they all come from the same general area, like that homeland that they all came from, which would actually also explain how Tyrek and Scorpan are familiar with Discord. Is what if Discord is not only a legend in Equestria, but in their homeland too? Like if he came from there first. In fact, it kind of be an interesting thing is what Discord did to their homeland is the reason they came over here.
Or perhaps there's a certain Lamia, another monsters.
Yeah. The idea is that maybe there was like some super mother of all monsters, or you know what Discord is basically equestrian Galactus. You know, there's things like that. You in the back.
Well, this guy's had his hand up for 45 minutes. So
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I'm sorry.
All right. So utilizing xenophobic nature of the company and the reflection of secondary canon and some obvious throwbacks with Greco-Roman society. What if the ponies are just representation? I mean, this is Greek society. All of their enemies so far have just been all of the Greeks. Changes in the Trojans. The Christian Empire was actually wrong because Roman slaves, he was very expansionist.
Very militaristic, very organized.
And because they lost, they're portrayed as victims.
Whereas Discord would be like the Germanic tribes and very.
What if they're all really just nobody's the bad guy? That's because Celestia is so powerful. She says they're bad guys.
You know, I do like that idea of the looking at Equestria as though it were modeled off of the real world, because for the most part it actually is. They've stated that the My Little Pony universe is actually, it's basically looking at them, you can look at them and they're human. They're supposed to be humans that just happen to be ponies. There's human experiences that just happen to be taking place through ponies. Right. It's a way to be able to explain the things that we do in our daily life, the experiences that we go through the guise of pretty pastel ponies. And you know that's why critiquing and analyzing them is so important, is because it helps you to also figure out, you know, if you're studying why these things are occurring and how they can affect other people and different ways of looking at them, getting the lessons and looking at them to get another lesson out of it, it can actually help you and improve your own ability to prove things. Because even if you don't critique or analyze, you can benefit, if you're a creator, from analyzing why things are the way they are. You know, because it helps you to figure out more about how you think.
So we know that Scorpion is human.
based on their initial appearance in the My Little Pony series.
In the G1.
In the G1, which was so associated with the same appearance or Scorpion was
In G4, we have never met Scorpion, so anything we could really say about Scorpion, we've seen a historical representation of what Scorpion used to be. You know, if Scorpion ever appears on the show, then we might be able to say a little more. But I don't think that, like,
his appearance being so close to his G1 appearance, you can assume that there's other similarities.
Assuming is a very dangerous thing when it comes to headcanons. A lot, you know, and a lot of headcanons are, let's be fair here, a lot of them do have a lot of assumptions in them. But there is also still a lot of predication, and we got to separate that G4 and G1 have never been conclusively connected, and the approach, the appearance of T-Rex has basically said that isn't the case. That there is definitely some similarities between their two universes, but they are not the same universe. Or at the very least, they are not yet. You know, because there's still the idea that maybe G1 is the future G4.
I think that unlike our universe, you can see that ponies are not the only race that has sentience. They aren't the only race that has consciousness. There are other, there are griffins and there are dragons, and they all have the ability of speech, and they are conscious and they have sentience. But I think that there are other nations we've seen where ponies are the dominant species, like Mertonia in the Series 4 finale.
Subtle Arabians.
Yeah, so are we coming to a consensus here that ponies are the dominant species of their planet where they are? Or
I don't actually think we can, but the thing about it is that humans, this is an idea that we really have no reference point for. There is no civilization of dogs or dolphins that we communicate with on a regular basis. I can't go to the dolphin embassy and, speak with their ambassador. But, so for us, when we say dominant species, we think solely human. But for them, the whole idea of, ponies, and then we see dragons and then griffins and all these different things, it gives you a different perspective on how their world works. They probably don't even have an idea of dominant species, like a dominant species on their planet. They probably don't even have a recognition for that, because that would inherently imply that there are lesser species, which I can guarantee you does not work very well for your foreign policy.
What they have said that quadrupeded animals and using in Equestria as sentience.
Well, and even some bipeds, because the Minotaurs. And we don't even know where the Minotaurs fit into the whole. We've only seen one.
Even cows.
Yeah.
Yeah, but where does it end?
I think.
And M.A. Larson said something about yaks in season 5.
I think even if ponies are the dominant species, that also gives them a responsibility to protect the other ones.
Well, if so, they're doing a pretty terrible job. Yes, my protector is running in the other direction from a zebra. Yeah, they're scared of plants. I don't think they're necessarily the best, military masterminds.
To be fair, those are pony villains.
Okay, the concept is, what kind of dragon is Spike really? Because he is
Wyvern.
No, he's not a wyvern.
Worm.
He's a drake.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Worm.
Water dragon.
We get that.
Yeah, and
his fire is different.
Yeah, his fire is different. His fire is different. He's the only one we've ever seen that doesn't have wings.
Yeah.
Wait, no.
He's also the only baby dragon we've
No,
seen.
actually, no. I think there is another that doesn't have wings. The green dragon.
Crackle.
Not Crackle. Not Crackle. In the Owl's Well That Ends Well, the green dragon, I think, actually doesn't have wings.
It just
didn't
fly. Did he grow wings in Synchronized Zest?
No, he did not. No, he does not. So,
experiment, but Celestia created.
I still think the species is fascinating.
Crackle? Well, but Crackle is a special case in every regard.
Oh, you're so special. Dragon.
So very special.
We have seen Spike grow up in two different ways. And it could just be that that's how dragons work, that they grow up to be different things.
I mean, that might go back to
That is an interesting idea, that dragons don't actually grow in any one uniform way, that they grow by the influence that they're subjected to. If he grows through magic, he grows like the big thick neck and he grows all fat. Maybe like the magic turns him into a fat dragon. Whereas if he goes through greed growth, he turns into Spikezilla. So maybe if he naturally grows, you know, maybe that would be a painful experience if, like, just one day he wakes up, goes through dragon puberty, and wings smash out his back. I've actually seen. I've actually seen these really interesting, like, pencil sketch DeviantArt pictures that actually showed, you know, the whole situation of Spike growing wings, how painful that would be.
And that kind of idea of growing in different ways, than what kind of goes back to that theme of like emotions have real world consequences, because then emotions they're subjected to will influence their development, which kind of makes sense if dragons are magical creatures.
I really like that idea. I think I might use that as my own headcanon.
Like if Spike is surrounded by, like, grows up surrounded by really great people, he will grow into this more noble creature. But if he grows up surrounded by, like, cruel, disgusting people, he'll get, like, deformed and mean and get
which might actually explain why dragons. We've seen that there, like, some of the bigger dragons might not necessarily be all bad.
Yeah, like that red one.
The red one seemed like a fairly nice guy. But, you know, we see the teenage ones that are all bad. So maybe dragons are awful because the environment in which they grow up in is awful.
To be fair, our teenagers are kind of obnoxious too.
To be fair, most people I find will probably be at some degree of obnoxious.
Yep.
Well, the adults still with that here
I know adults who are sometimes worse than teenagers. And we're going to have to be closing up pretty soon. We got like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. I've really enjoyed having this panel with you guys. I'm really glad you guys all got involved. I'm sorry that some of you guys had to hold up your hands a little longer than normal. Out of curiosity, are there anyone here who's like either a critic now or is interested in doing analysis?
I'm a hardcore analyst.
Awesome. All right. So if I can give, like, any of you guys would like maybe a little bit of advice or something, is, you know, find something that you find an angle. You know, that's the biggest thing. If you really want to be successful with criticism and analysis, first thing is use what you know. You know, read up on history, make yourself very aware of various different types of history and science and things like that, because they give you different ideas. And, you know, even the most crackpot headcanon can start discussion, and that can help come up with even brand new or different ideas. Like, I would have never considered the idea of dragons growing by different means. And I really, really like that idea. Yeah. And, you know, the other thing is, when I say find an angle, find something that you enjoy, is, you know, a lot of people want to be like Brony or Tommy Oliver, but, you know, they've already kind of got the market on that. So try to find something else that you can do. For example, like, I focus on the Brony community almost exclusively. I review fan fictions and fan creators. You know, that's kind of my thing. No stealing.
I focus primarily on the humor of the show when I write my reviews.
Yeah, and there's the other thing, is you also have to know what you're trying to go for. Like, you know, some people will try to go for the Roger Ebert style review of being very objective and trying to actually genuinely show that something is either good or bad. And a lot of people will try to do the nostalgia critic means and go for trying to make an entertaining video that's intended not to actually give you an opinion of the film so much as get you to laugh at the funny nitpicks. You know, and that's kind of where you also have to give in general. That's what you have to figure out. You have to have a goal and you have to have an angle. You know, those both will give you guys a great deal of success. I can't guarantee it, but that's the other thing is you have to keep going. You know, it's very hard because there's so many out there, but if you guys keep on trying, you can definitely you can definitely help to work with the argument. There can always be more advocates. Thank you guys for showing up.